Okay, I'm Riley, and I'm conducting oral history with Ingrid Nathan. The interview is being conducted at the Hopper Academy in the Georgetown neighborhood of Sanford, Florida, on Saturday, February 8th, 2025. Thank you for speaking with us today. Would you begin by stating your full name and telling us a bit about where you're from?
Ingrid Burton Nathan. I was born in Manhattan, New York, to Winifred Dorset and Michael Turner. She nursed me for 10 days, although she wasn't supposed to because she was giving me up for adoption. And so 10 days later, I was adopted by Edna Cross Burton and Ulysses Burton of Sanford, Florida. So born in Manhattan, but transferred to Florida.
Oh, wonderful. Let's see. What was life like growing up for you in Florida?
In Sanford. I was just talking about that yesterday. Growing up, I would just say before segregation, it was great.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't even know, we didn't really have a great sense of being segregated. We were just happy. This school was our joy.
Mm-hmm.
Being able to walk to school and all your friends, and I was like a tomboy. I loved to play, and my favorite thing was like go across the street and play in the dirt, play the dirt ball, and be with my friends in the community. So life was great. We were segregated, we were separate, and we didn't know why, but it didn't bother us as children. I'm saying as children.
And tell me a little bit about your time at the school here. What was that like?
Hopper? Oh my gosh. I remember all of my teachers. I remember them all. First grade, Miss Shepherd. Second grade, Miss Merritt, Miss Wiley's mother, Miss Julia Merritt. Third grade, Miss Willie Agnes Riggins. Fourth grade, Miss Bryant. Fifth grade, Miss Lawson. Sixth grade, Miss Bird. All my teachers. And they were all just loving and caring, and it was just, I loved everything. There was not a day that went by that I didn't enjoy school.
That's wonderful.
And our principal, Mr. Eubanks, Granville Eubanks, he just made the whole environment rich, and we always had something to do. We had assemblies upstairs. We had a magician one time.
Oh, wow.
And the firemen would come and demonstrate, and at Halloween he'd have a big festival, and in April and May they planted the maypole in the back, and it was just always something to do. And in the summertime, you had summer recreation. We couldn't, there was nothing else, nowhere else we could go. So the teachers, the black teachers, would just be here and supervise us. And we would have arts and crafts, and in the evening, they would let the big kids dance in the evening. We had a hop for the kids in the evening. I never got it. I was too young for that. By the time I was old enough, when I got to sixth grade, that's when they built the new Hopper. And then they didn't continue recreation. But it was great. We enjoyed. We knew everybody. Everyone was in the same community. And that's not happening now. Communities, everybody's moved away, gotten older, and all like that. But it was wonderful.
Awesome. Well, thank you. Well, I was going to ask, this next question is where did you attend school, but we know that.
Yeah.
Did you have a favorite teacher? What qualities did he or she bring to the classroom?
Well, it was between Miss Merritt and Miss Thelma Shepherd. Miss Thelma Shepherd, just her, she was my first grade teacher. Her air, she was calm. She had this great calm voice. And she was my Sunday school teacher at my church as well. See, some of your teachers attended your church, you see. Everybody knew everybody. And so Miss Shepherd and Miss Riggins both attended my church. But, she lived close by, and her daughter was friends with my god sister, and I looked, these girls that were older than I looked up to them. And they were models for me. And I just loved Miss Shepherd. She was just so sweet, so calm. And Miss Merritt, she was a great, thorough teacher, And she did things after school with us. Every year, she had, during the Moral and Spiritual Values Week, she would have us, she made us learn these speeches about, and I had to do Esau and Jacob, you know, and biblical stories. We had to memorize these stories, and we went to the radio station and we broadcast our stories. And she did things like that for us. And in the summertime, she did reading programs, which I was pretty rebellious. I wasn't as bad as Miss Watley was. I wasn't a troublemaker. I stayed out of trouble, except that like I didn't like reading, and my parents thought it's a good idea for you to be in the reading program, and I regret to this day, you know. But I was okay. But she had a reading program in the summer. She wanted to prepare us, you know, for life and for higher education, and she was all about that. She was wonderful, and I loved her. And she stayed in touch with me even when I went to college.
Oh,
so
wonderful.
these teachers, you know, they kept up with you. You know.
Where did you go to college?
Florida Southern in
Oh,
Lakeland.
What was your major?
My major was Spanish.
Spanish.
And I did some work in psychology, a minor in it, but when psychology began to seem like there was no answer to anything, I said, this is too broad for me. And so they had a program where you could minor in secondary education, and when you graduated college, you were automatically certified to teach. You didn't have to go through any other certification. So now my Spanish, I took Spanish at Florida Southern. I didn't take it at the high school I went to. I didn't take a word, I didn't know a word of Spanish. So, but I took Spanish 1, 2, 3, and 4 in college, and ended up graduating with honors in Spanish. You know. And I didn't, I could speak it so-so, but back then in the day, the way they taught Spanish, you just learned facts and you couldn't put the language together. So I made it my mission when I taught school, my first teaching job is to engage my students and try to get them to speak the language. And I learned to speak it better in the classroom. So I became fluent, though, just talking to people and talking outside of class and not being afraid to use the language and not being afraid to make mistakes. So, and I never traveled. I mean, I traveled to Mexico for 10 days. My parents couldn't afford to send me abroad to any of those programs. But I learned, I was fluent anyway. And another thing that helped me become fluent is, well, just now there are people who are fluent in Spanish, but they sound like gringos, you know. Buenos dias, como es, you know, like that. But with me, you know, everyone says that I sound Hispanic when I speak Spanish because I have good ears. I'm a musician, and so whatever I hear, I want to duplicate, and that, you know, I have to be perfect in the stuff that I pursue. And so, and Spanish was just, I loved it from the first day I heard it and had a chance to speak it. Why I majored in Spanish? Because Spanish, if you know Spanish and I know English, there's a door between us and that door is closed. But if I learn your language, then I open a door that wasn't open before, you see.
Yes, ma'am.
And so that's why I learned Spanish. And so my roommate in college was she came over from Cuba at the age of 6, and her name was Aixa Gonzalez, and she was my junior in my junior year. And she spoke English, she spoke Spanish, and she majored in French. And so I said, if she can do that, then I can do it. So I wasn't fluent at the time, but I said, Aixa, okay, I have to speak only Spanish with you. She said, okay, Ingrid. And like, I left the room. But then I began to talk with her, and so there's a process when you're learning another language. There's a filter that where you're saying, no, everything is how do you you know, in Spanish, in any language is conversational. It's not, you don't memorize this. I digress.
Yeah, that's very interesting because I did American Sign Language in my undergrad,
Yeah.
and the most immersive parts of it were not in class. We had to do assignments where we would go out into the deaf community and we would talk and go to events, and that's where you learn how to, sign and how to speak Spanish, and it's wonderful that you got that experience.
Yes, yes.
No, go ahead.
No, I just enjoyed teaching Spanish, and I was different from all the other teachers. I believe that Spanish, and when I first started, my first job teaching, I tried to get a job at Seminole High School, but Senora Williams would never retire. She would never quit. So I wanted to teach it, at Seminole. She wouldn't quit. So when my husband and I married and I moved to Virginia, I got a job in Virginia. In Virginia Beach, for some reason in Virginia, they taught us how to, they said Spanish should be functional, okay? You should use it. And if you teach Spanish 1, at the end of Spanish 1, your kids should speak Spanish 1. They're only limited by the amount of vocabulary they know. That was in me, So when I got back to Florida, and Mr. Darwin Booth gave me a job at Lake Brantley High School, that was my philosophy, functional Spanish. And I was so cool with it. I loved it. But the other teachers didn't think so. And it wasn't until one of the teachers went to Dr. Pat Wolf's seminar, she realized that language is functional and it's for survival, not to memorize this vocabulary, grammar rules, and don't know how to do anything with them,
It's culture.
Yes. So I really was misunderstood for many years as a Spanish teacher, but my students appreciated me.
That's wonderful. You mentioned that you were musically inclined. Can you tell me a bit about that?
Well, I inherited my musical ability from my birth father. When I now see, how do I know who my parents were? That's a miracle that happened in my life, because I was never supposed to find out who adopted me. So a young girl by the name of Warner Brown she lived like over that way, a couple of streets over. And I lived on Locust, and she lived like, very close to here. And we both went to the school as elementary. So she was working in New York, and she, by some coincidence, she and my mother connected, and through I'm gonna make it short, through their conversation, my mother realized she was from my hometown, and that the Burtons, that she secretly found out that the Burtons had adopted me. And she knew Burtons, Sanford, Florida. Of course, she had no way of doing that, mail, snail mail, and she had no connections in Florida, so there was no chance. And my mother, she wasn't financially, she didn't have great finances. So there was no chance of her communicating with the Burtons. See, so when she mentioned Burtons in Sanford, Florida, my mother, when they finished the conversation, she said, "That's my baby. I gave her for adoption." And then Warner called me probably that same day, and she asked me, was I looking to be adopted? Had anyone ever talked to me about whether I was adopted or not? I said, I told her, I have tried to find out. I've heard stuff. People have talked over my head and said, that's the girl that Burton raised. And I'm going, what? Wait, raised? It's my father. And then as an adult, I heard little things, but I didn't have any proof. My daddy, I asked him about it, and he said, he always denied it. He said, and he told me to write the Bureau of Vital Statistics. Well, when you're adopted, it comes out the same way. So I did that, and it came out Ulysses and the Burton. So I couldn't find out. I could not find out whether I was adopted or not. I didn't know.
Wow.
And 2 weeks before I found out, my friend was talking to me, and she said, Ingrid, we were just getting acquainted as friends. She said, I want to ask you a personal question. I said, okay. She said, are you mixed with something? I said, not that I know. No, I don't know. I might be adopted. I have no idea. my eyes are brown like my dad. So she said, well, you know, I mean, if you are, like, aren't you concerned you might pass your brother and sister on the streets every day? I said, Janice, I gave my life to Christ this year. And if God wants me to find my mother, he knows I can't find her. He's going to have to send her my way. And 2 weeks to the day, my classmate called me because she had met my mother. And 2 weeks after that, my mother arrived on a train.
Wow.
And that's how I found out that I was adopted.
Wow. How was that reunion between your mother and you?
I was at the train station with my daughter. My daughter was about, she was 15 months old, Ayana. She's the oldest. Mm-hmm. And we were there, and when she got off the train, she had a leather purse, and she had some silver bracelets because she was West Indian. Mm-hmm. Her family was, you know, from St. Martin, St. Kitts. Her side of the family. My father's side was from, I think, North Carolina, the Carolinas, like related to Nat Turner. That's what he told me when I did eventually meet him. Mm-hmm. But she got off, she said, this is the most valuable thing I have. Take this purse, and here, take these bracelets. Wow. And she put them on my arm. And she said, I love you, my angel. She said, I can die in peace now. I always told the kids that I thought you were still alive, but I did not know how to reach you. And so she said, I'm so happy to finally meet you, and you know.
Mm-hmm. That's like wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, awesome. I'm so happy you got that experience.
That it was mind blowing, really. Mm-hmm. But I eventually met all my brothers and sisters. That's awesome. The next year.
Wow. That's wonderful. Tell me a little bit about your mom. I know you sent us some pictures.
Oh, yes. Mm-hmm. Well, I'll start at the end. She died when I was 5 years old. So there are people in Sanford that know more about her than I do. And I'm in the process of trying to find out as much as I can. I'm turning 75 this year.
Happy birthday.
Thank you. In June. So anyone older than me, but I mean, they have to be at least 10 years older than me to have an idea of knowing who she was, but some people do. And I knew she owned a funeral home, and I knew that she had been in the military, and that's all I knew. I remember things about her, but it's before. I do have a few memories of her. I remembered her face. I remembered things that happened. I remember her walking across the street, and I loved to ride. I wanted her to ride me on her back. Oh, yeah. She would carry me on her back across the street. I remember that every Easter she would, Yowell's, that department store downtown, the lady would bring dresses to the funeral home. You know, that my parents owned the funeral home. I didn't know anything about how affluent they were at that time. But they would bring dresses to the house, and I just pick out what I wanted to wear. And I remember that. I remember crawling in the bed with her when she was really sick, and she didn't last much longer after that. When everybody wanted me out of the room, she said, no, let her be here. I remember her voice being soft and sweet, and she was calm all the time. And, and I remember dreams that I had about her, and one dream in particular that told me she was going to die, because she passed by the funeral home in a blue car, and she was sitting in the car, and I called out, and she didn't hear me, and the car drove off, and behind the car was a green army truck. She was sitting in the army truck, and I called out again, Mom, Mommy, and she didn't hear me, and they went by, and this happened twice, and then I woke up. Wow. And that was just, to me, was letting me know that she wasn't going to be with me in my whole, lifetime.
Yeah. So, wow. Well, thank you for sharing that with me.
You're welcome. You're welcome. But I eventually found out that she was in the 6th AAA.
Okay, can you explain a little bit of that?
Yeah, I didn't even know what 6th AAA was. But I was visiting my stepsister in Atlanta, Christmas Day. Christmas Day. And this is my first time meeting her whole family. She told her daughter, let her watch the 688. What kind of a name is that for a movie? I didn't know what 688 was. So I saw the preview, and I said, well, I'll watch it when I go home. When we were home, my husband and I watched the movie. I cried in it. I was happy. It was a great ending. And so the credits were rolling, and they passed by, and I said, my mom was in the military. I know she was in World War II. Both of my parents were in World War II. And I knew that. So I said, let me rewind. And when I rewound it, I saw Edna Cross Burton in the credits on the monument to the 688. I started screaming. My husband thought something had happened. I just started screaming and crying. Honey, she's a 6888. Mom was a 6888. And I was just overwhelmed. It was unbelievable that my mom was one of them.
Wow.
But I was very proud because she made Black history before the Civil Rights Movement even started. In the 1940s, I integrated schools in 1964. So she was doing her part, and I was very proud.
Wow, that's amazing.
Thank you.
Let's see. What are some favorite things about your community?
How close I was to school, being able to see my friends every day. That was my favorite thing. We didn't have a pool to go to or anything like that. But playing with friends after school, I loved to play. When I went to church, our teachers were our Sunday school teachers. But I just loved going out when I finished what I had to do at home and just going out and being with friends, being with my cousins, because when my mom died, my father remarried, and so then I moved to Locust Avenue, just down. We lived on Locust at the funeral home, so I moved down and I stayed with my stepmother. And but by then I wasn't going to school here. But still, being around here is just great because, see, when I integrated schools, I wasn't accepted by most of the students. Well, it's like I didn't hear a lot of rejection. The words weren't spoken to me blatantly. I heard the N-word, but no one ever came to my face. Thank God. Okay, thank God.
Yeah.
They never came to my face, but I heard it on the bus when we were on the bus, and I ignored it. Anytime I heard it, it fell to the ground because I didn't acknowledge it. It was just in conversation. But I never disconnected myself from Crooms, you see. I integrated schools, and I would go to Seminole, but after school, I was with all my cousins, with my friends. When there were basketball, anything that happened at Crooms, I was there. So I remained in the class of 1968. They graduated from Crooms, I graduated from Seminole, but I am of the class of 68 of Crooms High School. My boyfriend was there. He's now my husband.
Oh, amazing. High school sweetheart.
Yes. Yeah. He stalked me.
Tell me a bit more about that. How did you meet?
Is that permitted on here?
Yeah.
I was 10 years old. Okay. The best thing about this community, one of the best things at Christmas time, skating. You haven't heard of skating on Locust Avenue? We had skates. They're called Union 5s. If you look them up on Google, they were metal, and you put them on your shoe, and you screwed them in, and they gripped your shoe, and they had metal wheels, and we got Union 5s for Christmas, and we skated on Cypress, okay, because Cypress was the only paved street, basically. All the other streets were dirt roads. Every Christmas, we skated on Cypress Avenue, and then they paved Locust, and so we skated on my street. So now all the kids from Sanford, from Georgetown, Goldsboro, Oviedo, Bookertown, Geneva, Altamont, everybody came to Locust Avenue to skate on Christmas Day. And the boys would grab the backs of cars and be
Oh,
you know, like that. And then they would do trains, and they would sling trains, you know, and I like that because the big boys would let me hold on to them, and they would sling the train, and the poor guy at the end would go flying off into somebody's yard. And I'm looking like a big girl. I'm with the big guys, and I'm just in the trains, you know. So, but we liked skating on Locust at Christmas time. So that I have to say that because that was my first time meeting Mr. Nathan. And so he frightened me to death for NIC. The first time he said something to me, I like ran away in fear. I was 10 and he was 12, and he said, "Little girl, come here," and I skated over him. And he said the most horrible thing to me. Make me happy. Say that to a 10-year-old? I ran away from him. I didn't know what he was. He scared me to death. But when I was in 7th grade, he walked up to me at Croom's, and he wanted me to be my boyfriend. And I said, "No, boys are trouble for me. Boys are trouble. My parents do not want me to have a boyfriend. They give me a terribly hard time. It's going to be bad, and I cannot have a boyfriend." I said, "You have a girlfriend anyway." "No, I don't. No, I don't." I said, "Yes, you do. You're going with my friend." No, I'm not. So he bothered me like 2 or 3 days, and so he was cute, you know. So I said, I didn't know any better. So I said, "Okay." And so he became my boyfriend, but boy, was it hard. When he called, we had those rotary phones with the button. And so I pick up the phone. When the phone rings, my mom and dad, they would press the button down slowly so you couldn't tell that they were listening. You see what I'm saying? They would lift the thing and keep, and then they would catch me talking to him. I don't understand why. My parents were so strict about, I can't, all the other kids, they didn't seem to have such restrictions, but my parents didn't want me to even look at a boy, you know, and you know, that made me just even more rebellious. And he was determined. But I had, you know, that's just the way it was. And then, you know, when we got older, I had looked at all of these movies on TV, Father Knows Best, Lassie, all these shows where you have 2 parents in the family, and you know, everybody's happy and all like that. June Bride, you know, all these shows I saw, and I was determined that I was just going to have one boyfriend. I didn't want to have several boyfriends, just one. I seriously, that was my mind. I'm a good girl. I'm just going to have one boyfriend. That's that. And I told my friend, she said, "Are you going to marry Ron Nathan?" I said, "Yes, I am." And I was just 12 years old. I didn't know what I was doing. But, you know, we went to 2 different colleges because he went to A&M and I went to Florida Southern where I got a scholarship. And we stayed together. Got married in 1972. We've been together, last year was 52 years.
Wow. Congratulations.
Thank you.
It's wonderful.
We've been married 52, but like I've known him for 62 years. We've been together 62 years.
That's awesome.
Was this worth?
Yeah, this is awesome. This is perfect. It's your life history. It's beautiful.
Thank you.
Is there anything else you'd like to add or expand on?
My father.
Your father?
Ulysses Burton. Yeah. When they asked how I came to integrate schools, is that they had a biracial committee. They formed it because Seminole County had not complied with desegregation, and they had the biracial committee. And I know my godfather, Dr. George Stark, was on the committee, and some other black men in the city. I cannot say all the names. Someone else might have that historical fact, but I know my godfather was on there. And so I understand that they met and they had discussed whether they had to determine when they integrate schools based on this committee's recommendation, should they send a kid to every school in the county, or should it be just elementary only, or high school, or just high school different levels? Just how should they do it. And so they decided, let's just send one kid. And so I don't know the process, but my godfather suggested me. I was reliable because my grades were good in school. And this is not fact. Someone said this to me. I don't know how truthful this statement was, but they said that also because I was fair-skinned, I wouldn't have such a hard time. But guess what? It didn't matter because I was black, and it didn't matter what color my skin was. I was treated, that way. But anyway, one day my dad came home. When I came home, he said, "Baby, how would you like to go to the white school?" I said, "Really? Sure." I mean, just like that. I said, "Sure." Now, what motivated me to do that? Because some people would look at my hair and I go, "She thinks she's white." No way, no way. I was curious. That's all. I just wanted to know what made me less than white kids. Why was my intelligence? Why wasn't I not as intelligent as white children? I didn't understand. And so I was curious. I wanted to know what was going on. My cousins would ride their bikes Locust Avenue, and they would cross Celery Avenue. On the other side of Celery is white only. On this side of Celery is black only. And they would ride their bikes through the white community all the time. And the tomboy that I rode with them. Mm-hmm. So we would ride through the white community on our bicycles, just looking at the people waving and riding as fast as we could, though. We didn't linger in there. And they would look at us like, "Get out," And so that was curiosity. It was already in me. We even trick-or-treated in the white community one night. And I'll tell you how that happened. I told my cousin, I just got this brilliant idea. I had this black mask. So I put the mask on and put a white sheet over my face like this, like I don't know, I was supposed to be a ghost or something. But anyway, and I said, hey guys, I said, I could pin this really tight and they will just see my face. And if I go up to the door, I can just do this and say trick or treat. And I was just kidding. They said, "Do it." "Yeah, let's do it." And I'm going, "Wait a minute. Do it, Ingrid. Hey, we're going to do this." So me and all of my cousins, as Brenda, Alvin, Frederick, Reginald, Pat, and Brenda, all of us went trick-or-treating, and we crossed Celery. I'm dressed, and it was dark, so they stood in the back behind the tree and sent me to the front door. I knocked on the door, and the lady opened the door, and I said, "Trick or treat." I was trying to sound white, saying, "Trick or treat," I did like that. And she said, "Hi, whose little girl are you? Do I know?" I said, "I don't think so." And so she said, "Well, let me get you some candy." And as soon as she came out with the candy, all my cousins came out from the tree, and they all came up around me. So then the lady realized, oh, these are some black kids here in this community. But she was fine with it. We had 2 houses, and then some boys saw us, and they were trying to lure us under a tree because they had, they would probably throw something at us. So we left. But we did trick or treat one time. We had a nice time. Got out of there. And so, when Dad asked me, did I want to go to white school, I was just curious. I had been crossing the line anyway. It had nothing to do with my physical features. I just wanted, and in school, about my dad. When I went to Crooms, whenever I would show him my report card, he would say, "This is good, baby. Just make the C's B's and the B's A's." And that's good in itself, but my dad, anyone who knew my dad, anyone who grew up with me knows how he felt about me. See, he had adopted this cute little girl. Oh my God, I was everything to him. He loved me so completely. He showered me with love. He told me he loved me every day. he would sit me on his lap, and with his cigar, he'd take the cigar. I love you by James. I love you by Jingles. You are my natural heart by James. He coddled me until I was like in my 20s. He'd always want me to sit on his lap. You know, my dad loved me. So school was about taking care of business for my dad. Whatever he told me to do, I was going to do academically the best I could. There was mediocrity was not an option for me. I had to do my very best. So I made the best grades that I could. And he gets the credit. He gets the credit for how he showered me with love. And my stepmother, Cleo Alexander Burton, she stepped in when I think I was 11 years old when she married my dad. So I had no mother. So she took on the role. And she didn't want me to integrate schools. She told him that, but he decided to let me decide. But she was from Live Oak, Florida, where Willie James Howard was lynched. Her family was friends with the famous civil rights leader who was killed by the KKK in Mims, Florida, Harry T. Moore. Her family and his family knew each other. His mother visited her at her house there in 1107 Locust, 1105 Locust. Harry T. Moore was buried by my parents when they killed him. The funeral home, Burton's funeral home, my parents buried that civil rights leader.
Wow.
Edna and Ulysses Burton. Their picture is in Ebony magazine. It's at the Harry T. Moore Museum. When you see the picture of his funeral, my dad's standing in the center, Edna Burton is standing on the side. Those are my parents. They buried him. And Cleo knew all about that. You know, she knew about people that were killed and lynched. And she didn't want me to be victim to that. The night before I went to the schools, I got a phone call from a white lady, and she told me not to go to the school. She said, we don't want you at that school. You don't belong at that school. And so you shouldn't go. So tell your parents you don't want to go to that school. You just tell, I'm 14 years old. How did she get our number? How did she get my number? If they got our phone number, then they knew our address. But fear wasn't a part of my makeup back then. I was just curious. So she didn't scare me. And really, you would think so. And she said, so go tell your parents that you don't want to go to that white school. I said, yes, ma'am. And I hung up the phone and I went to bed. I didn't even, my parents, my father died, he never knew. Cleo found out about it in 1998. Okay, when the Orlando Sentinel magazine did an article on me, and that's when Mike Berry did the article, and I told the story, and that's when Cleo found out that I'd gotten a threatening phone call. She didn't even know.
Wow.
So.
Well, that's wonderful. Thank you so much for sitting down and having our interview.
Thank you for taking the time.
Mm-hmm.
You know, sometimes I ramble on, but anytime anybody wants to know anything about what it was like, I'm willing to share. I've spoken in churches and Girl Scout groups and organizations. I don't know if anybody wants to hear it now, but whenever I start speaking, I say, I am Ingrid Burton Nathan, and I am Black History.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Is there anything else you want to share?
I can't think of anything
right
now.
But Ingrid, you've been amazing. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.